This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast. I'm Marianne Matzo.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete.
So grab your beverage of choice, your dessert, put your feet up, except if you're driving or you're at work, keep your feet on the floor. And thank you for spending the next hour with us as we discuss ways that you can prepare yourself for receiving bad news. And later in our third half, Death is going to stop by and we're going to ask them some questions.
Ooh, okay.
So
how should I dress for that?
I don't know. I think your G-string with the spangles on it would be kind of cute.
I assume a black one, though, right?
Well, I don't know. It depends which country you're
from.
Well,
why?
Yeah. Other countries, like red's the color or white's the color, Oh. You can't be ethnocentric. You gotta spread your wings, so to speak. So what are you eating?
Well, seeing now that movement is rather limited due to the coronavirus, I've been limited to candy bars at the local grocery. I don't want to give away brand names, but if your chocolate intake is limited, go for a chocolate that's either. Look at the ingredients. If it's something where it has, natural ingredients, less, sugar and names that you just can't pronounce, try it away from those, or don't even buy it in the first place. Actually, don't even buy it in the first place. So I can tell you, yes, there are chocolate bars available, and I brought a few home. So, just check the ingredients of your chocolate bars. What about you? What do you have?
Well, actually, today's our 1-year wedding anniversary, and I had bought, I know, how cool, huh? And I bought David some of these apricot kolaches. Have you ever had them? In Michigan, we call them keeflies. Did you ever have those?
No, I don't think so.
They're kind of a Polish, Czechoslovakian thing. So I bought him this box of them, and today's our anniversary, and they're gone already. So I think he liked them. I got one. But you can get the mail order. I mean, they taste like my mother or my grandmother made them. But you can order them, and they'll deliver them to your house. So that was pretty cool. And our chocolate of the day is supposed to be chocolate brownies. I made chocolate brownies about a week ago, and they're still sitting in a Tupperware container. So I suppose I could have one of those, but I'm not going to. But we have a great recipe that we're going to post online for you for Death by Chocolate Brownies. So give those a try and let us know. Charlie, I'm going to talk about receiving bad news.
Okay.
And this, I always really try not to sound like a teacher when I talk about some things. And so if I slip into teacher mode, just feel free to, slap me. But I thought this was really important to talk about because I've given bad news. I've sat in family meetings giving bad news, and people don't know what to expect when they go in to see a healthcare practitioner. And what I thought we could do, Charlie, is kind of give them some pointers or let them in on the secret of what the healthcare practitioner is doing, the doctor or the nurse practitioner, so that when you hear certain things, you'll be able to recognize it as, this is what's going on. And these feelings that I'm feeling, these are kind of normal feelings. And if I take too long, then we'll save the rest of it for a second half, second part.
So we'll have a part two.
We'll make a part.
Yes.
We'll make a part two if we have to. But I just think this is really, really an important thing because it's not only the listener who might be in the situation of getting bad news, but you might be the daughter or the mother or the sister. Or I had a friend once who was going to go and hear about her breast cancer, and she said, "Will you go and just listen for me?" Because what happens when you're in a healthcare environment is, first off, it's really stressful and people get really nervous. Second off, if somebody says even a word like cancer, it's like that. Remember that Far Side cartoon where the man's standing and talking to the dog, and he says, "Skip, you got to start da 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 da," and he starts hollering at the dog. Mm-hmm. And the dog, you see the dog's sitting there, and all he hears is "skip," blah 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 blah.
Sure, yes.
Remember that one? Well, that's how it is when you hear about you have a serious diagnosis. You hear the first part, the cancer, and the rest of it's all blah, blah, blah. And that's why it's good to have somebody else with you who can write stuff down and say, "No, Mom, this is what they said. Here's what they said." So it's not only you who needs to learn, I think, who needs to learn how to hear bad news, but also how to help other people in our families.
To listen.
So let's first start.
Yeah, okay.
To listen and what to listen for and what questions to ask.
Okay.
So first off, kind of the obvious question is, what is bad news? So bad news is information that results in an emotional reaction. An emotional reaction. You have to go to work in the ICU with coronavirus, and we don't have any masks for you. Well, that's bad news, and I'm going to have an emotional reaction to it.
Right?
It's
Yes.
any kind of bad news. You go to your favorite bakery. Now, this is a way minimal one. And you're just, man, I want to have this, and it's all gone. It's like, it's bad news. It's not on the same scale of hearing you have a terminal diagnosis or you're taking care of coronavirus patients without the proper PPE, but it's still bad news. So there's lots of levels of bad news. So how do people usually react to bad news? So there was one study that was done by Loeb in actually 1999 where they looked at 100 people who were diagnosed with cancer. The most prevalent or the most frequent response was shock. 54% were shocked. 46% were frightened. 40% said they felt acceptance. 24% said they were sad. And 15% said they weren't worried. So that just tells us there's a pretty wide range of how people react. But we can probably pretty much think that you give, serious bad news, people are going to feel shock or fright. Now, we have to remember that the healthcare practitioner, the physician or the nurse practitioner can't change the news, but they can change how they're going to deliver it to you. They can change whether or not you're going to feel more confused or more anxious just by their skill in being able to communicate this information.
So isn't this something that's taught in school to medical professionals?
Well, they do teach it. It doesn't get a lot of time in a packed medical or nursing curriculum. A lot of times people don't have time to practice it before they have to actually go in and do it. So there is a class. And what I'm going to do today is kind of give you guys the class so that you can know what sort of they're supposed to know and realize that you're not the only one who's shocked and frightened. That for a healthcare practitioner, that physician or that nurse practitioner who's coming in to give bad news, they're going through their own stress and frightened and anxious feelings. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute.
Okay.
Most people who hear bad news, they don't remember what they were told at all. It's just how we protect ourselves, we don't remember. So if you're going in, you've been having symptoms, you haven't been feeling quite well, the nurse practitioner does a bunch of tests, and they say, okay, we want to come back and we want to go over your test results. Don't go alone. Find somebody who you say, hey, here's a piece of paper. I want you to write down what you're hearing, because I know this is going to stress me and I'm really not going to remember it. Now, what happens with both the patient and the clinician is that there's an encounter, right? These two people are going to sit together, and the clinician, before they go into the room, they get really stressed. Their stress level goes up through the ceiling. Patients, I'm a little nervous about what I'm going to hear, but they're okay. But the clinician knows, crap, I got to go in there and I've got to tell this person this bad news. Their stress level is high. They go in, they give the bad news, they start to calm down, but now the patient has heard the bad news,
Right,
their
yeah.
stress level goes up. So there's this intersecting point where both of them are extremely stressed because it's hard for both of them. So as we talk about how do you get bad news, there's lots of ways that you're going to hear physicians or advanced practice nurses giving you bad news. And we have a couple of scenes from movies that we wanted to share with you about some ways that you may receive bad news. Sandy's going to embed in here the voiceover from a film called My Life Without Me. And this is, if you haven't seen this film, it's kind of old. I mean, not forever old, but it's kind of old. But it's such a good story about a young woman who's diagnosed with metastatic ovarian cancer, 2 little girls, and what happens and how she goes through it and how she kind of tries to make sense of what her life is going to be like when she's not there. And so then I want you to listen to the doctor and what the doctor goes through as he's trying to tell her about her bad news.
And you work at the university?
Yeah, I clean the university nights.
And you're 23.
I'll be 24 in December. I'm an Aquarius. What about you? What star sign are you? What the hell is happening to me?
We've done a scan 3 times, and are you sure you wouldn't prefer to call your husband?
No, I would prefer not to call him.
We've done a scan 3 times, and I've ordered a pre-biopsy.
So, what?
You have a tumor in both ovaries. It's reached your stomach, and it's beginning to spread to your liver.
Wow, that's pretty far gone, eh?
And if you were 20 years older, the whole thing would be spreading more slowly. We could operate on it. But your cells are very young, too young, in fact, and I'm afraid there's nothing we can do.
Wow. How long?
2 months, maybe 3.
Here's me thinking I was pregnant.
No, I'm afraid not.
I knew it was something pretty serious when you sat down here beside me.
They're renovating my office, changing the air conditioning, and no, that's not true. I can't sit down in front of someone and tell them that they're going to die. I've never been able to, and the nurses are beginning to mention it. Your family might want to see another doctor. They might want a second opinion.
Someone who tells me the exact same thing as you, but looks me right in the eye?
Can I get you a coffee?
No.
Bourbon?
Let me guess. You're going to offer me a cigarette?
No.
Do you have a piece of candy?
A piece of, yeah.
It's pretty good. What flavor is it?
Ginger.
It's pretty good. It's a bit hot, but it's okay.
I've prepared some leaflets, which more or less explain everything, and some recipes to help you with the nausea. And I'd like to see you next week. I've given you an appointment and my direct line in case you want to call me.
Yeah, okay. Do you have another piece of candy? One for the road?
I'm sorry, that's my last one. Next week, I'll have more candy.
So, Charlie, what'd you think of that? What'd you hear from that physician?
The the part where he said he was honest when he said, that, he just can't look at someone, which immediately my thought was, this is Hollywood. In real life, for a medical professional to be that vulnerable, to expose him or herself and to show what could be perceived as a type of weakness. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't see that happening in real life. Apart from that, I like the way he was, as best he could, that he was sensitive to what, to her plight. But again, a lot of it was just him being uncomfortable, which is just very realistic. I mean, how many people are, and again, medical people are comfortable saying that to someone. And as you said, people have the training, but it's one thing to have the training and something different to actually have to put it into practice. It's, in the comfort of four walls in a classroom is not the same as looking someone, in the eye and explaining that they have some catastrophic disease.
Right. And studies have been done. Randy Curtis did a study in 2001 where he talked with patients and they said, so how'd that go? And the patients who reported that it really wasn't optimal, it didn't really go well, is they said, well, the doctor was too blunt, that the place or the time was inappropriate. The patient got a sense that there was no hope, and they wanted the physician to say, there's some hope. Patients wanted their physicians to be sensitive, to be honest. They don't want to be lied to. They don't want it sugar-coated. They don't want us to evade, but they want to have some hope. So another way.
Yeah, but if
go ahead.
Something like that, if there is no hope, if someone is terminal, like the doctor told her, 2 to 3 months, you don't want to sugarcoat it, but I don't see what else a doctor could say to a patient other than that. Maybe the delivery could be different, but in something like that, I'm sorry, I don't see any hope there.
Well, what we're hoping for changes, and it can change over time. So if you're hoping that this isn't true and somebody else is going to tell me something different, I mean, definitely if you want, go get a second or a third or a fourth opinion. But if it's a stage 4 cancer and it's confirmed and you say, well, what do I hope for now? Do I hope I can reconcile with my sister that I don't ever talk to? Can I hope that I can be comfortable? Can I hope? Hope is not always about, is there a cure? Hope is about a lot of things.
A good death, so that something can go smoothly at the end.
Or that they won't be alone, or that commitment to, I will be with you. This is, we're gonna do our best, but we're gonna be by your side. That you're not going to be abandoned. So, hope is a lot of different things. And we don't have to. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but then what you're describing, it seems then that whoever's delivering this, news can be bad news, it can be catastrophic news, has to have that self-awareness on how to, phrase the idea of hope. And as what you said many times, or even in that film clip, the doctor was not able to look his patient in the eye. So I can't imagine someone like that in a real life situation then going to try to offer some semblance of hope to someone.
Well, and our objective as educators is not to have physicians and nurse practitioners that are so uncomfortable that they're not able to look their patients in the eye and they're not able to be sensitive and honest. I mean, that being a good physician and being a good nurse practitioner is a skill that's learned. And so then you can get into a whole discussion about the educational system, which, we can't, or there would be no point. But we can educate the public and say, here's what they're going through. Here's what the difficulty is. Don't look at these people as gods or goddesses or, people that are so different from you and should have all of these different skills. Yes, there are things that you should be able to expect from your physician and from your nurse practitioner. But bottom line, end of the day, they're people. And your part in this is to say, all right, here's this news. What do I do with it? And how do I get the best care that I can? And that's what Charlie and I are offering the audience today, is some insight into what goes on so that you can influence your own hope and your own honest communication with the people that are helping you. So our second is from a film called The Shootist, and the website has the information about that film. If you've never seen it, it's really quite a wonderful film, and it's very profound because it's John Wayne's last film. He knew he had cancer when he was filming it, and so did his friends, Jimmy Stewart, who's in it, and Lauren Bacall. They knew that he was very sick while he was filming this, and there are some really profound scenes between the actors as they're talking about illness and the end of life. So here's the scene.
Doc Hostetler.
John Bernard Books.
You remembered.
Oh, the newspaper occasionally remind me. What was it, 15 years ago?
The only time I was ever hit. Right here at the Acme Saloon.
You killed 2 men.
I'm damn lucky you were around. That second one nearly did me in, coming out of nowhere like that.
You must have the constitution of an ox.
Well, we'll see. That's what I'm here for.
Oh?
About 10 days ago in Creede, Colorado, I hadn't been feeling up to snuff, so I went to see a Sawbones there. The next day I got on my horse and took off to find you.
And what did my colleague in Creede say?
Examine me, and I'll tell you.
You don't trust me.
Doc, you saved my life.
You don't trust my profession.
In my profession, you trust too much, you don't celebrate many birthdays. I kind of like it around here.
All right, I'll examine you. Take your clothes off down to your long johns. And if I'm going to know what to look for, you have to tell me what's ailing you.
Well, I hurt, Doc. Way down deep in my back. Not all the time, but now and then, suddenly.
Pain in the lumbar vertebrae?
Like sin.
All right, whenever you get ready, just bend over the table there, trapdoor down.
Well?
Books, every few days I have to tell a man or a woman something I don't want to. I've been practicing medicine for 29 years, and I still don't know how to do it well.
Why don't you just say it flat out?
All right, you have a cancer. Advance. Is that what the fella up in Creek told you?
Yeah.
And you didn't believe him?
No.
Do you believe me?
Can't you cut it out, Doc?
I'd have to gut you like a fish.
Well, what can you do?
There's just very little I can do. If when the pain gets too bad, I can give you something.
what you're trying to tell me is that,
Yeah,
damn,
I'm sorry, Books.
you told me I was strong as an ox.
Well, even an ox dies.
How much time do I have?
2 months, 6 weeks, less. There's no way to tell.
Well, what'll I be able to do?
Oh, anything you want at first. Then later on, you won't want to.
How much later?
You'll know when. You'll have to get off your feet and get some rest. See. So, Charlie, how did you think the physician did with that bad news?
Well, he did it a lot better because they knew each other. They obviously have a history, and the character John Wayne plays went to Jimmy Stewart's doctor character because of that relationship. He knew he would get the straight story. He was comfortable, doctor-patient relationship. Each one was comfortable with the other. So I'm sure there are many people who have that type of relationship with their doctor, but again, if someone has been in relatively good health for most of their life, and now suddenly is feeling not well, has to go to an oncologist, and all these different new people, it didn't seem very realistic that in most cases in real life that type of doctor-patient relationship would exist.
Not anymore, right? Remember when we were kids, there was the family doctor, and I can always remember him. Yeah. You'd see his car in the neighborhood. Somebody was sick. He made house calls.
Yeah.
They delivered you, and they knew you all the way up till, either
high
grew
school
up and left the town, or
exactly. Yeah.
Right, and those relationships, like with Jimmy Stewart's character, we don't have them anymore with our physicians. So for Jimmy Stewart's character to just look at John Wayne and say, "You got cancer," it's generally not quite so blunt, but the relationship isn't quite as tight either.
Right.
So we know that healthcare practitioners learn a protocol on how to give bad news. But for the listener, if you've been having symptoms and you've had testing and you have an appointment and you're going to meet with a healthcare practitioner, you got to know that generally, if everything's okay, they're going to just call you on the phone and say everything's fine.
Right.
If they say, you know what, I need you to come in and we're going to chat about your results, that is sort of what's called like a warning shot for you. Maybe I need to be prepared when I go in. I need to prepare myself for what I might hear. Please, if you can, bring somebody with you who can take notes. Or if that's not possible, we all have phones now, ask them if you can record it so that you can listen to it later, and so that, your kids, when they say, well, didn't you ask this? Didn't you ask that? Da, da, da. You can say, here's what they said. Okay.
So in your experience, are doctors or nurse practitioners okay with that being recorded?
Everybody's different, but I'll tell you, I can only speak for myself. When people would say, "Can I record it?" I'd say, "Sure. Here, put it over here so you can hear me." Because they need to be able to go back and listen to what is it they were told.
Yes.
Okay. So what doctors or nurse practitioners are told is that you need to know the facts. You need to have a time to talk to the patient, have a quiet space, make sure that you sit down, make eye contact. A lot of times, healthcare practitioners are pretty busy. They're in a hurry. They don't take the time to sit eye to eye and look to you. But that's really important when you're going to listen to bad news. And if they're standing up and kind of shifting around on their feet, feel free to say, hey, why don't you sit down and let's, talk to me directly. Maybe that'll remember that before they come in the room, their anxiety level's really high, right? We have studies to show this. So it's okay to say to them, you know what? You seem a little anxious. Why don't you sit down and just talk to me?
So in order, again, as you had said about, if you can't have someone with you, you need to prepare yourself for that. Maybe just talk to yourself first, what you want to say to the doctor, what you want to hear from the doctor, which is basically, the unvarnished truth, maybe in a nice way, but just the unvarnished truth.
But not everybody wants the unvarnished truth, Charlie. A lot of people do not. And so I always say to people, you know what? You've been sick. You've been having these symptoms. And I'll generally say, we did some tests. So tell me, what do you think's been going on? A lot of times people know exactly what's been going on. And they'll look at you and they'll say, I think I have cancer. Well, you know what? We did these tests and here's what we did find. We also ask, so how much do you want me to tell you? How much do you want to know about your condition? Or is there somebody else that you want me to talk to? When my sister had cancer, she didn't want to hear anything. She would say to the doctor, talk to my sister. She wanted them to just talk to me. When the doctor came in and said, you have 3C ovarian cancer, she said, okay. It was just post-surgical. She said, okay. Doctor said, do you have any questions? She said, no. The physician walked out. I looked at her and I said, do you want to know what it means to have 3C ovarian cancer? She said, no, I don't. If I have any questions, I'll ask you. I said, okay, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. She said, okay. She knew she could have all the information she wanted. She didn't want it. You do not ever force people to hear what they don't want to hear. They say, I don't want to know. You don't say, but my protocol says I have to tell you. It's like, too bad. I don't want to know.
Well, then in something like that, if somebody doesn't want to know doesn't want to know, what do you do? Well, what does the medical professional do?
Well, you can say, so is there somebody else you would like me to talk to about this?
Okay.
And they might say, well, because you got to remember, Charlie, they came to us in the first place, right? They were having some sort of symptom, some sort of pain, some sort of digestion thing. They came to us in the first place. They went through the testing in the first place. Now they're at the point where, okay, here's what we found out. How much of this do you want to know? Is there somebody else you want us to talk to? So think about that for yourself before you go in. Do you want to know? Is there someone else that you want them to talk to? And then generally, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking. I live in New York City. It's the largest city in the country. I know where you live is smaller than New York.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the biggest city in the country. I guess everything else would be smaller. I have a gift for the obvious sometimes. Because what I've seen a lot of times here with with people I speak with, in this big city, a lot of people either have lost touch with family, in some instances never married, never had children. People tend to isolate here. Mm-hmm. So even if someone becomes sick, takes him or herself to the doctor, and there literally is no one for them to talk with. And I really have come across many people like that. Mm-hmm. What do you suggest? What do you recommend?
Well, if you go in and you say, I have nobody to take with me, then you might have to say to yourself, well, I paid my money at the gate. It's like going to Disneyland and saying, I'm just going to look. I'm not going to go on any rides. I'm not going to go see the Hall of Presidents. I'm just going to walk around. Well, okay, if you want to, but why go? If you don't want to know what the result is, why start the process in the first place? So there's that aspect of it. Okay. The other aspect of it is to say, you might say, I don't really want to know. But then the next step of the bad news protocol is that warning shot to say, I have some bad news about the results of your x-ray, the results of your blood test, or the results of your scan. And in that moment, then you have to say, do I want to hear this? Or am I just going to pick my stuff up and go home and not pursue it further, not have any treatment? Because if there's something wrong with your scan and you don't want to hear what's wrong with your scan and you don't want any other further follow-up, well, that's a choice. You don't have to go on any of the rides. But you did get yourself to the park.
But you went to, right.
You kind of have to decide,
Yeah.
And so that warning shot is to say, well, there's something that didn't go quite the way that we, that we would have liked, right? And so then to say, well, would you like me to tell you what we did find? I tell you, 9 times out of 10, or nearly almost 10 times out of 10, people will say, yeah, I want to know what's wrong. And so, okay, here's what we found. And people, like I said, they get anxious, they get scared. And
different people have different reactions, right.
Right. So what you might hear from your nurse practitioner or your physician is say, I can see that wasn't something that you were planning to hear. We don't have to say, well, that's a perfectly normal reaction, because what is a normal reaction? But we can say, doesn't seem like maybe that was something you planned on. Or if the patient says, well, I think I have cancer, it's like, well, so it sounds like you've been thinking about that for a while. And here's what we found. So you've given the bad news. All right. It's stomach cancer, like in the video that we listened to, My Life Without Me. It's, stage 4, what she have, ovarian cancer. Right. So then you want to say is, okay, here's what we're going to do now. Because, we're, after all, Americans, and we want to plan, doggone it. So what comes next? So here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan. I can set you up to talk to this specialist. I can give you my number. Here's how you get in touch with our clinic. If your kids or you have questions before your appointment with the specialist, here's how you can get back in touch with me. Plus, I'd like to make an appointment for you to come back and see me after you've seen the specialist. So what you're doing is you're giving that lifeline. They're offering you that lifeline. Take it. Go see the specialist if that's what you're feeling, that you want to know more. What are the options? What are the possible treatments? What exactly is going on? Mm-hmm. Know how to get back in touch with that doctor. Don't leave and say, get in the car and say, I don't even know how to get in touch with them. Or when your daughter or somebody says, well, when are you going back to see them? Oh, I don't know. I didn't make a follow-up appointment. No. Make that follow-up appointment. I'll tell my patients, even if you decide that you're going to cancel it, make the appointment. Get on the books. I'm booked way out. You don't want to have to say, I need to go in to see her and say, oh, you got to wait 3 weeks for an appointment. Make the appointment now. If things are going in a different way, or you really like your specialist and that's going to work out great, perfect. You can cancel your appointment. It's not a problem. But what I wanted our listeners to do is to know there's a real protocol for how doctors and nurse practitioners are going to give news. And there's a responsibility. We all have responsibility to prepare ourselves to get the news.
Right. So it's
We're
a
not
two-way
going
street.
to necessarily.
Exactly.
We're not going to necessarily like it. It's called bad news for a reason. It's because it's upsetting to hear it, but being upset about hearing it doesn't make the news go away. And if we had a way, the nurse practitioners and the physicians had a way to make it go away, you better believe we would. We don't like to do it any more than you like to hear it. But we can form a partnership with each other. We can work together to get you through it and get you to be as healthy as that disease and the technology we have can allow you to be.
That makes sense. So as we've discussed on previous programs, it's about advocating for yourself again and preparing, maybe making a list, as you said, making a list of questions to ask the doctor just in advance, because if you suddenly hear what you have suspected, yes, you have cancer, or yes, your health is very, very poor. Yeah, right there at the moment, many people will not have the wherewithal to think of what they really need to ask and find that information. So just to prepare in advance and have a checklist, to take with you.
Even if you're not going to hear bad news, going to see a physician or a nurse practitioner for any reason can make us anxious.
Yeah.
And when I go for my yearly, exam to see my general practitioner, in my appointment calendar, next to the appointment, I write down the questions that I want to ask her. Because I know darn well, once I get in there, there's going to be this question, that question. She's got her agenda, and I'm going to totally forget to ask about, why this is that way.
Right.
So, and I work in that environment, and I'm not getting bad news. I'm getting my blood pressure checked or whatever. So it's not any failing at all to write down your questions. That way you can say, okay, now I have a few questions for you. Oh, all right. So let's go through them. And then you don't have to be sitting around wondering, what the heck is this all about?
Yeah.
So, man, write it in your phone if that's what you like to do. I like paper and pencil, but, that's me. So, welcome to our third half. Trying to know death kind of is comforting to us. We think, well, we learn about life, right? We're born, we learn about life, but we really don't know what this thing about death is. So we thought we would invite Death to come on our show and answer some of the questions.
Oh.
Yeah. How cool is that?
Our first
to answer
guest.
Some of our questions.
Yes, very good.
Our first guest. I don't, and maybe she'll be an ongoing guest if we're lucky and behave ourselves. But I'm not counting on anything from you, Charles. So no pressure.
No, none at all. Thank you.
So Death's going to answer our mortal questions in this segment, which is called Memento Mori. Do you know what that means, Charlie?
Mori is death.
Right.
Memento. No.
So memento is from Latin remember. So you can translate it to be remember that you're mortal, remember that you will die, remember there's death. We tend to live our lives, Americans tend to live our lives with the idea that death's an option, that we're not going to choose ever, and that if we don't think about it, it'll go away. Well, that's neither of those is true. You're going to die. Mm-hmm. And however you're going to define the term memento mori, its purpose is to remind people of their own mortality. We're all mortal, and that hasn't changed. And until it does, memento mori. So, what we did is we asked our Facebook friends to send us some questions about if you could talk to death, what would you ask? We have, for your listening pleasure tonight, an interview with death. We decided that it might be interesting to go and have drinks with the different death entities, because apparently there's more than one. Who knew? And tonight I have the pleasure of interviewing one of the death entities. So, Death, should I call you something other than Death?
No, I am deaf.
Okay. How did you come into being? Did you have to apply for the job, interview, audition?
No, I just came into being. It's kind of like birth. One day I was here exactly the way I am now, and I've been this way for many, many, many decades.
Wow. And you have no idea. How did you know what to do?
That was part of me. Like in the science fiction things, they have robots and all kinds of different people and things that just do what they do. And that's what I do. I've just always known it.
So, do you have family?
No,
You didn't have parents or siblings or anything like that?
no.
Okay. Did you go to school?
Well, not formally, no. I never been to a school except in my work. But no, I've never gone to school. I never had any training of any kind. I just always knew what I was supposed to do.
Interesting. So, we have questions from our listeners. Would you mind if I went through and asked you some of those?
Oh, go right ahead.
So, Jackie from Tulsa wants to know, will I see my loved ones in my afterlife?
Well, Jackie, I wish I could say I know that you will, but I don't know it for sure. But I do think that you probably will, because I can tell you of a situation where a woman who had been very ill, and it was her time, and I was in the room. Not that anyone could see me when I'm working, you can't, but I was in the room, and shortly before she died, she sat up in bed, and this was a woman who had not been able to move at all for 2 weeks. She sat up in bed, looked at the foot of her bed, and just stared for a while, laid down, and I think it was within an hour she died. And I took her with me to the door. And I heard her family say, I hope she saw her mother and her brother. And maybe she did.
So, we don't then really know for sure if we're going to see those people that we've loved, but it's more of a hope that that will happen. Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, I'm saying I don't know what happens because my function is just to take the living part of the person away. I take them down a short road to a door. They go through the door, and after that, I have no idea what happens. I've seen many, many religious people, all different kinds of religion, and everybody believes what they want to believe, but I don't know what happens after they go through the door.
Have you ever tried to peek around and look to see what's on the other side of that door?
No, 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 no. That's not for me to do. No. You see, I just take away the what people call the soul.
Mm-hmm.
I just call it the inside person who I have taken their life. I just take the inside life away, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's about it.
So when you're going from like that bedside to the door, do you chat with the people?
Well, I try to make them comfortable. I say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I am not a mean person. I'm here just to stop your pain, your misery, and to escort you to what comes after life.
And are people usually frightened, or what's your experience with that time in
Mm,
between on the way to the door?
well, yeah, some are frightened. Some are, especially those who have died in like murders,
Mm,
sometimes war. Um, but people who are very, very ill um, don't seem to be afraid, and the very elderly don't seem to be afraid. Somehow, I think coming with age, a person becomes more at peace with the thought of me coming to get them.
uh-huh. So
and
do you
and
think, go ahead.
I'm not a mean, scary person. I don't look like this, like you're seeing me now when I come for the person. Um, but I am gentle and I am kind.
Hmm. What do you look like when you come for them?
Well, it's kind of ethereal. Um, I look pretty much like their soul looks, just kind of wispy, like a
Hmm.
beautiful cloud with a bit of a glow to it, if you can understand that, if you can picture that.
Hmm.
That's how I look as death. Now, what happens with me is when I'm with other people, and it makes no difference what kind of person, what race, what country I'm in, I look like a person who fits in. Um, Only rarely do people see me as you are seeing me now.
Hmm.
Um, but that's because I'm totally alone and I can be this. But I'm very adaptable in other circumstances.
That's really interesting. Let's see. Patty from Texas wants to know, where do you buy your clothes?
Well, as I said, I fit in with everybody, and I am a bargain shopper. I happen to love Marshalls and TJ Maxx. Once in a while, if I'm in another land, I will buy something that looks like when I was in Tunisia. I bought something there. Um, in fact, the scarf I have on today, I bought in California, in the
Oh,
United States.
so where do you keep all your stuff when you're traveling around the world?
Well, I have um, I have a home place no matter where I go. People don't know I'm there, but I'm there. I right now am in somebody's apartment, and of course they're not here; they're away, um, and they won't be home for some time because of the coronavirus. So I am in their home, and I just happen to know and go. So I borrow people's homes.
Do they know it when they come back? Do they say,
Oh no!
something's different
Oh no!
here?
No! Mm-mm. No, I am a neat person, and boy, do I clean up after myself.
Okay. Um, David from Ohio wants to know, are you religious?
Oh, I have no religion. I know there are people who believe in what you call God. People believe in, oh, there are a whole variety of things. But no, I have, no, I'm just kind of universal.
Hmm. Okay. Um, what would you say is your greatest fear?
My fear? My fear. Well, I don't, I don't have any. I'm, um, whenever it ends, whenever death ends, or my segment, let's say that, because I'm not the only death, but whenever it ends, whatever will be, will be. No, I have no fears of anything.
Hey, Sarah, Sarah.
Yes, I remember that.
I was wondering if you were going to burst into song there.
Well, no. I like to sing, but I don't like anybody to hear me. No.
I see. So, we call the segment Drinking with Death. I was curious, what are you drinking?
Uh, my drink of choice is kamikaze.
Oh,
I learned about kamikazes from Japan. It was an awful thing after the atomic bomb. I was very, very, very busy there. But I did go into a place where they did have some alcohol lying around, and there were a few people who were not destroyed by the atomic bomb at that time outside of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I went in and I looked like a Japanese person and spoke the language. And a man was in there and offered a drink to me, and it was a kamikaze. And I thought that was really interesting, given that that's what their planes were doing. They were called kamikaze pilots. But I like it very much. There's one other thing that I like that's rather hard to get. It's a wine called Chocolate Shop, and it's chocolate flavored wine. So those are my two drinks. That's about all I drink.
Well, Death, I really appreciate you drinking with me today, and I hope that we'll be able to get together.
I will have a sip to you.
Salute. Do you have any last words for our interview?
Well, do you think we'll get together another time?
I'm hoping that you'll agree to. But I thought
you certainly will.
I thought you said you had a joke for me.
Oh, I have a joke for you. Would you like to hear the joke?
I would like to hear the joke.
Oh, but it's a rather long one. So you know what? Instead, I'm going to leave you with something that is food for thought.
Oh, okay.
You know George Bernard Shaw, who he was. Lovely man, lovely man. Enjoyed my time with him. He said, life doesn't cease because, wait, my memory is not, life doesn't cease to be funny when a person dies any more than it ceases to be serious when somebody laughs. And that's my version of it.
That is good food for thought.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah. It was my pleasure, and I say to you, l'chaim. Jewish people say that it means to life.
Well, salute. That's what Italian people say. And
I
look forward to drinking with you again in the future.
Absolutely. Anytime that I'm not at work.
Well, yes. Thank you.
So please send your questions for Death, questions for us, death-related jokes, or anything else death-related to us at info@everyonedies.org. That's dies.org. Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned for future episodes of Everyone Dies. Our thanks to our CEO, retired Major General David, our producer Sandy, John, our technical advisor, and Megan for giving death a voice, and our friends and family who are helping make this podcast a reality. This is Charlie Navarrete.
And I'm Marianne Matzo.
And we look forward to talking with you soon.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.